Today we are going through all 112 minigames in Super Mario Party Jamboree and talking about the best strategies for every single one, so that way you absolutely never lose a single minigame when you're playing online or with your buddies locally. With 112 minigames, let's not waste much time, but first, before we get started, a lot of you watching today's video are not yet subscribed, so let's stop and see how many people we can get to subscribe from this video, especially if you learned something from at least one of these 112 minigames. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and let's dive into the video. For Lumber Tumble, the best way to survive is to stay a little bit far back from the front moving logs. Obviously, you don't want to hug the back ones too much either, but I know a lot of people like to run up front as fast as they can because at the very end, the paths will branch, and some of the paths will be better than others, including some just getting completely broken off. So stay back and watch closely from what's in front of the logs that are in front of you. Remember, it's not a race who finishes first, all you have to do is finish. For Big Top Quiz, a lot of the time it'll be two of the same enemies on two of the balls. All you have to do is remember the one that's different, because most of the time, no matter what the question they ask you, you'll always be able to remember which one's which. And if you're not sure of the name of the enemy in order to keep track of things like color, or does it have wings, or does it have a spike. For Camera Ready, once again, it's not about who finishes first. You have a lot of time on the clock, so use every single last second you have, even if it's down to the wire. Make sure your picture is absolutely perfect. Look at the trees, look at the road, look at the environments, and look at the characters and their expressions and how they're looking, because everything is factored in. Even the way the character's arms or legs or head is moving will be factored into your final score. For Scarousel, jumping is key. You actually get more momentum and forward boost as you jump, so literally just jump as much as you possibly can as you're moving forward. It's going to help out a lot. For Snag the Flags, stop for a second and watch in which direction everyone runs, and run in a completely different direction. Odds are you're going to have a good part of the planet to yourself. Try to constantly move forward and a bit at an angle. In Sandwiched, try to stay in your own area to focus on the sandwiches that are falling near you. As soon as one falls, jump on it immediately, as it's going to be a little bit longer for a sandwich to fall back on that spot again. Your eyes should be constantly staring at the top of the sandwiches and paying attention to the shadows. That is the major key here. Hot cross blocks might be an annoying minigame, but there is some strategy around this. Don't just focus on blocks to help you advance, but also look at your opponents. Look at the spaces that they are currently on. For instance, Toadette could only pick a path that had a top layer to it because she was already on the top, so you might want to also help eliminate that from her next move. Sometimes it's not about you progressing, it's about picking the right pattern in order to prevent your opponent from finishing before you do, and then eventually waiting for you to get a better pattern in the next round. For Light Wave Battle, you can literally just focus on dodging the first couple seconds of the match, where everybody will probably spam ground pound and knock each other out, leaving only another player left. Also, if you use ground pound, it also delays you a bit in the air, allowing you to dodge different ways, so use it as a defensive tactic as well. Do not be in a hurry to choose and thwomp the difference, because sometimes it's not just a different fruit altogether. Instead, sometimes they'll have all 3 bananas and one of them have 4 bananas, and same with the grapes as well, with one having less grapes than others, so make sure you are completely confident before picking your choice. For Cold Front, I found it easier to always be hopping, especially when you're moving out of the way, because sometimes you're trying to run too quick and you'll end up slipping for a while, but constantly keep one eye on the top row and one eye on the row on the side. Hot Hot Hop is actually a very easy minigame. The difficulty comes into the players running around and bothering you, so make sure you isolate yourself and stay away from all the different players and just focus on the Magmars mostly. Always jump over the fire bar and always run behind or well in front of them because they will dive forward, especially when 2 of them collide. Yes, there are ways to cheat in domination, such as using a massage gun or a turbo controller, but if you want to be fair and honest, you can use a controller just with a bigger button, maybe like a GameCube controller, and just practice your mashing efforts. Are you better with your thumb or your index finger or maybe your big toe? I don't know, what works for you? 3 throw is all about timing. It's about when you press the button a second time. If you press it at the height of your jump, it'll go to the top hoops, the middle of your fall to the gold hoops, and if you press it again right before you land, you'll get the bottom hoops. But a lot of people seem to miss the golden ones, so always be ready to aim for those no matter what. So I definitely feel like it's best to focus for the top and middle hoops. Granite Getaway is another incredibly easy minigame. Just constantly have your eyes towards the top of the screen and get ready to jump. And honestly, you could just spam jump as much as you want. that also will definitely help, but it's an easy minigame and you shouldn't have too many problems with it. For tilt-a-golf, you always want to go straight for the hole. Even though there is a giant bunker 90% of the time in front of it, go in towards the bunker and just pop yourself out by popping the Joy-Con up into the air. For night lights, I found it best to tuck your elbow into your side and not have your arm fully extended. Most of your motion should be in your wrist and forearm, and try to do mini circles as fast as possible. Hammer it home is very precise. Once you learn the exact distance to bring the hammer back for each nail length, you will be a pro, but it does take time to learn. Some of the smaller ones you can literally hammer it straight away, and only the tallest ones do you need to charge almost to max capability. For the tallest nails, I always look and wait for the reflection of the light into the face of the hammer, and right after the reflection, swing the hammer. Twist and sort is a very simple concept, but eventually you'll have multiple different things popping onto the stage at once. Never simply focus on the bottom enemy. You'll want to keep balancing the top and the bottom ones, even if it means delaying the bottom one for a little while longer, just so that way you can get the top one to also eventually fall down as well. Also, don't give up, because you can still get points after the timer ends. Shuttle Scuttle is really just dependent on who you're playing with. You can have some mean friends that try to very slowly push you into an amp, but it's your job just to stay away from everybody. Stay in your own area and try to stay as low to the screen as possible and let everybody else fly up and collide with each other, because there is no reward for finishing first. All you have to do is finish. For Tiny Triathlon, you can completely exaggerate the motions. In fact, I don't even really do it the way they tell me to, because I didn't find them to be the most effective. I'll show you my hand motions on screen, but for the first two, it's the most important to make sure that you go as fast as possible. Besides the hand motions that I'm showing, the best advice that I can give is to simply make sure you're gripping the Joy-Con as hard as possible, because it's very easy to let go or slip out of your hands with these hand motions because it's just so tiny. For Pickaxe Dash, I honestly don't have much advice for this one. I can't find a real surefire way to do this extremely good like some people's records online. The best thing I could do was run in place by quickly moving both of my arms as fast as possible. You could also try sitting down and just focusing on one arm and just flicking as fast as you possibly can. Let's be honest, I feel like we all hate gatekeepers. It's just a completely random game and it's just not that fun, and it can take a very long time unless you're super lucky like the computer seems to always be. At least for me, when it came to doing this for the story mode and getting 3 mini stars by coming in first, I found it easier to just pay attention to which key works, leave the game and then come back, and it should be the same key to the same gate combo. Once again, at least that's what worked for me. But when you're playing with your friends, just pay attention to which keys and which doors that they used, and make sure that you keep track in your head and always go for the same key that someone already used, but try a different door. Odds are you'll have a higher chance of getting it right. Sled to the Edge is a minigame that takes extreme concentration. Always pay attention to the lower of the 2 toads. That's the one that you'll really want to play off of, and pay attention to when he lets go of the sled. Mark that area somewhere in the background towards the top. Lots of the time there will be a little iceberg somewhere or maybe a penguin, and just mark that spot and remember where it was. The best way I can remember is counting all the pieces of icebergs to the start all the way to where that toad let go, so that way I know it's coming up. And make sure you release right after the spot that bottom toad released on. For Rings to Riches, you'll just want to collect as many coins as possible, but pay attention to the big snow piles. You have to actually bump into it 3 times before breaking it and getting the red coin. If you're by yourself, it's probably easy just to do it yourself, but also if the snow pile lands near someone else, let them try to break it and try to swoop in for the final hit or for the final coin grab. For Treetop Treasure, you'll want to use your buddies as platforms, because a lot of the time the coins will spawn too high for you to reach. So instead of trying to raise or lower the platform, just bounce off of the enemy's heads in order to reach some of the higher coins. For Treasure Divers, you have a couple of options. You could try to go for 2 medium-sized chests because it should be quick enough for you to grab both of them, or you can try to go for a big one and a small one, or maybe a big one and a medium one. If you're going for a big chest, please take your time. Make sure you're clear of any enemies nearby, and also sit by and pay attention to your opponents. If they get hit with a big chest in their hands, you can just swim by and take it for yourself. Platform Peril is pretty simple and straightforward. Just make sure you don't fall whatever you do, because if you do, you're completely out for the rest of the minigame. Always try to jump for platforms that have 2 coins on them, or go for the areas with the 2 coins, but mostly just stay alive. A lot of the time for Stamp Out, your opponents are going to try to cover your color of ink the entire time, but not if they're not really paying attention to you. Try to make your way towards the outside of the sketchbook and just kind of line up the outside. There were a couple times where people never really noticed I was doing it, but also try your best to cover up the person that you see the most of on the board. On Trampoline, the quickest way to lose this game is to get stuck underneath another another player as they're jumping on top of you constantly. Try to find your own area to jump on, because you can easily get distracted and messed up by another player. But if you're going for world records and you're doing this alone, my best advice I can give you is that the ants actually switch up directions every minute until you get to 3 minutes. Then at 3 minutes, you'll notice they'll do it every 40 seconds, and from 340 to 420, then to 5 minutes. The further you go, the shorter the time that they'll switch, so always keep an eye on the timer and pay attention every time it reaches the top of 10 seconds, just to make sure that they don't switch on you. For Sunset Standoff, the best way to dodge the bullet bill is just to trick your opponent. Stand on one side and make them guess if you're going to run across or come back. You can try juking them out by running one way and quickly running back the other way at the last second, or especially if there's only one round left and there's 2 of you left, make sure you have one person on one side and the other person on the other side. You both cannot get hit. If you're the one in the bonsai bill, I found the best way is just to go completely straight down the middle and at the very last second choose if you want to go left or right. Cookie cutters is pretty simple if you're all on the same team, but if you're by yourself, this can get pretty taxing. All you have to do is quickly remember every single cutter and the buttons right before it starts, and you'll be able to blast through this as fast as possible. It's a simple just memory and paying attention game. I also found it easier to use 2 hands and 2 thumbs for the left and right button presses. For unfriendly flying object, if you're the one flying the UFO, it's best to stack a lot of things towards the middle and trap everybody towards one side of the stage. Then you can focus tossing things on top of one another and trying to flip them over. If you flip them over, the spikes will be placed on the top, which makes it extremely hard for them to get by. If you're the one running, try to have your players spread out. Having some on the left and the right sides focuses the UFO player on one player at a time, draining the clock as fast as possible. If you're the ones controlling the hammer for Lost and Pound, it's best if you guys collaborate and figure out which buttons you're gonna press. So that way you guys can at least try to spread it out amongst 2 or 3 different buttons and you're all 3 not picking the same one, unless you're very certain. If you're the one hiding, it's really just how well you know your buddies. I feel like a lot of the time you can get away with picking the same hole, so definitely try that a couple of times. For arch rivals, if you're the one shooting the arrow, the ends are the key. The middle one seems to be the hardest one to hit, but you definitely can hit the ends. Don't shoot an arrow when the platform reaches the very edge, because there's a very good chance you're going to miss far to the right or far to the left. Unless your opponent is holding the target all the way to the right or all the way to the left, you'll want to wait for the platform to start making its way back to the center before you fire another arrow. Also, just pay attention to that same process when you're the one holding the target. If you're the one controlling the switch and on again, off again, I've found the best strategy is to have one of the grolls land on another one for them to clank and go in a random direction. Also, just constantly mix up how you're dropping them, allowing them to roll a little bit longer than normal before sometimes just dropping them right on an enemy that's not expecting it. But if you're the one dodging, simply just spread out and focus on your own area. The last thing you'll want to happen is interference with your own teammates. Bruiser Bash always feels extremely one-sided. I have not played a single game where the one controlling the Robo Bruiser was able to actually lose. So if you're controlling this thing, I really don't have a tip to give you. Just constantly chase down opponents and you will hit them. And if you're the one running away, I really don't know what to say. It has very harsh left and right movements, so I guess the best thing I can say is just spread out once again and have each other all running in different directions and try to change the direction that you're running in as much as possible. For cage catch, if you're the one swimming, just stay away from the cheap cheeps and constantly be at motion. It is incredibly easy to be caught in the cage, so one of the best methods I can give you is to try to fool the one dropping the cage. Act like you're swimming towards it just to swim away as fast as possible. And like I said, if you're the ones dropping the cage, it's very, very easy. Make sure that you talk to each other and really focus on lining the cage up before dropping it. For income stream, your best bet is to bump everybody all the way off as fast as possible and make your way towards the front and try your hardest to collect the coins before your opponents can even get to them. And if you're one of the 3, try to spread your team out in a triangle-like formation. Have 2 people in the front and 1 in the back, or vice versa, depending on where the Plessy rider is at. So that way you have coverage all over the waterway. For Blame It on the Crane, you have to make sure that you play for the delay. There is a slight delay for the crane to drop down, so you want to activate it shortly before the balls actually row towards you. And if you're in the ball, remember you can run against the wheel in order to slow down by going in the opposite direction, or you can run with the wheel in order to speed up. And you can interchange these back and forth, especially right before you go past a crane. You can speed up real quick before going back into running slower. Also, try to drain the clock as much as you possibly can. Once you go past the crane, just keep running in the opposite direction in order to slowly make your way around before trying to change your strategy again. For Snow Brawl, this can end very quickly for the side of the one player. Make sure you hide behind your monkeys as quickly as possible and take your time taking out the opponents. Do not gather snowballs in the open, make sure you're always behind a monkey if available, or back yourself all the way to the edge of the circle before picking up a snowball. If you're the team of 3, also do the same. Do not pick up a snowball if you're near the blue line. Back all the way up and then spread out. Don't cluster all together and give the opponent a harder time trying to single out which one to hit. For Squeaky Showdown, if you're the one with the hammer, do not go after a single player. Mix it up and evenly distribute hits amongst all the players, especially the ones with the bigger bags. But if you're the one with the coin bag, try to run back and forth as quick as possible, moving left, right, or up, down. It will be very hard for the opponent to hit you with the hammer, and you'll be kind of breaking their ankles as fast as you're moving. Try quick, sharp movements instead of long runaways. For Rocky Rope Race, it's extremely simple. When it's your turn to swing, let go of the button and press and hold it once you reach a bar. There's not any real technique I can give for this one besides paying real close attention to the positioning of the bar. If it's lower, you're going to be pressing the button sooner. If it's higher, you're going to be waiting a bit. For Pick and Produce, if you're placing fruits on the middle conveyor belt in order to give to your teammate, do not place them towards the end of the conveyor belt unless it's an apple, because if you do, the fruit might fall into the apple basket before your teammate can actually grab it. So always make sure you're placing non-apples in the middle or the top of the conveyor belt and not the bottom. For Prime Cut, it's not about cutting the steak directly in half. You have to pay attention to the shape of the steak, which side has more size to it. A lot of the time, you'll have a lopsided steak, which means you'll need to angle your saw in order to get a piece of the big side and a piece of the little side on both pieces. For Dory Pedal Paddle, just remember the person on the right pushes the dory to the left, and the one on the left pushes it to the right, and both of them together will make it go forward, and pretty much just work with that and you'll be a-okay. For Robo Arm Wrestle, it's literally just about being as quick as possible, so just practice swinging the Joy-Con as fast as you can. For Shadow Play, there's really not a specific method as either of you can have a top or bottom piece, but the best advice I can give is pay attention to the symbols before you start on your wheel, so that way you can go straight to the big ones that you've already memorized. I know it's very obvious, but for matchmakers, always split up and stay on the outsides first. And as they add more cards to the room, space out even more, and once one of you finds one that looks similar to another one, keep holding it up. Don't leave and just coach your partner in order to find the other one. Defuse or Lose is a very easy game to cheese. Just have one character stand on the intersection and just continuously ground pound every single time it lights up, where you can do the same on the other cord as well, and both of you guys can just keep the cord from lighting up by just continuously ground pounding as soon as you see a spark. I really don't know how this is allowed, but I've won almost every single time by just doing this same method. For Jump the Gun, if you're the one shooting bullet bills, you'll always want to place them around 4 to 5 spaces apart. If you're going down on a slope, try 5 and just make sure your teammate can actually make the jump. But if you're going up on a slope, you'll only want to shoot around 3 to 4 spaces because it's going to take a lot more energy to reach that higher path. For 2-axis taxis, one player is moving front and back and the other left and right. The best method that I'd used for this one is if one player is constantly moving in a direction, let's say towards the left, immediately hold your down or up button in order to switch directions as soon as your other player lets go, because as soon as you let go, the other player is immediately in control. This will give you quick switch offs with a fluid motion without ever having to stop. So if you're the one that's not in control, get ready to control even while your teammate is already moving. Tricky Turntables is all about reading your opponents. A lot of the time you'll be way too focused on the grand reward, like the multiple different coins, but also pay attention to the punishment, because that is more important. You do not want to get hit by a bomb, so make sure you have second and third options available just in case you don't get your first option. Make sure that bomb is definitely not something that's going to hit you. Just remember, you can jump on and off endlessly and at the last second if you want. Coin Corral is definitely a frustrating minigame because of the motion controls, and you need 2 people in order to pull up the big chest, but a lot of the time you may not understand exactly how it wants you to move the controller. Not only do you have to spin and throw, but make sure you also pull back as fast as possible to hurry up and get your reward. After you get a chest or miss, your rope is on the ground, so immediately swing the Joy-Con up in the air before spinning in order to activate the motion of the rope swinging. So my best advice is really just do big exaggerative movements, because a lot of the time this minigame just does not work right. For Fast Fishing, it's simply pure reaction speed. You should be looking looking at nothing else but the giant bobber in the water. As soon as you see it move down into the water, immediately yank up. And you want to move the Joy-Con in a quick snap. Don't raise your whole arm because it'll take extra time in order for it to calculate your raise. You'll want to quickly snap it up by using your wrist. For Snappy Go Round, it's all about manipulating your opponent. Do lots of jumps without doing anything. A lot of the time, your opponent is going to react by also jumping and possibly ground pounding. You have a lot of time as well. Use the clock all the way down to the final second if you can. If you're the one in the lead, just stand there and wait for your opponent to make a move first. A lot of the time, if you're just playing all defense, you're not going to get hit again. But if you want to play more offensive, just pay attention to when they jump. As soon as they jump, follow up with a ground pound right after. By the time they land on the ground, they will get hit by the hand. For Stone Eye Bowling, the most important start is that first hill, because it's going to completely change the course and direction in which your ball rolls. Also, you do not want to roll the ball directly down the middle. You want to be a little bit to the left or to the right, or there's a very good chance that you'll just roll right down the middle and miss the left and right sides. Also, don't be afraid to use the gutter walls. There's no penalty, and sometimes the ball will bounce pretty hard off the wall, redirecting your path. Fuzzy Heights is about taking risks. If you see a path that's open above you, continuously press forward. A lot of the time, you don't even need to stop at each section. Sometimes you can just keep going up. Even if you do take a little bit of damage, sometimes it'll only push you down a little bit and not all the way back below that certain section. So if you need to sometimes, take a chance, take a gamble of taking a hit. It can actually help save you. For all the marbles, you don't need to spend your entire time punching your opponent, unless you really hate them for some reason. But pay attention to the little gaps in the marbles and follow them. If you're the one behind, you'll get a little bit of a boost to catch the one in front. Just follow the path that the one in front has made and wait to punch them right before they cross the finish line, which should give you the go ahead at the very last second. Now we have some item minigames that you play solo. Roll With It is very simple. Just make very small, very abbreviated movements with the Joy-Con. Don't exaggerate your tilts and just take your time. You have plenty of time to get the marble into the item slot that you want. For prize line, just follow the vertical and horizontal lines leading all the way back to the start arrow. Start at the item that you want and watch that line go all the way to the arrow, and if it leads, then that's the one you'll want to pick. For a stone's throw, it's all about timing with your power meter. Just pay attention to the slots on the board and try to match it up with the same positioning of your power meter, and it's all about timing. For Flip and Find, you're really just going to have to keep your eyes on both of the cards that you want and just pay real close attention when they're flipping and switching around. It's never too difficult and you should be pretty good to go. For prize drop, your main enemy is the moving platform at the drop. Try to drop the coin when it's nowhere near that platform, and even sometimes when you land on it, it will still slide off towards the middle. Now we have the character spotlight games, with Mario's three-peat, and the first game is Leaf Leap. This one's very simple, just pay attention to the leaves and where they spawn. You'll always want to be looking at the top of the vine the entire minigame, and pay close attention to if they're spawning to the left or to the right. The second game, Bumper Balls, is extremely simplistic. I mean, genuinely, if you just stand in the middle of the arena, you won't ever get knocked off. If anything, it's really hard to knock people off because the bounce isn't that strong. Don't focus too much on knocking other players off unless they're at the very edge. Just focus on surviving to make sure you get your points here. Or if you really want to be risky, you can kind of sit at the edge and have somebody charge you and move out the way at the last second in order for them to pretty much commit a baller suicide, I guess you could call it. Now, Shy Guy Says is definitely the hardest of the bunch and one that's definitely going to trip you up. Just pay real close attention to the Shy Guy and his flags, because a lot of the time he will switch flags. Don't be in a hurry to hurry up and raise the color right away. Wait for Shy Guy to finish completely before raising your flag. Yes, if you wait too long you'll lose, but when you get to round 3 and 4, he'll do multiple fake outs, so definitely take your time and pay close attention. For Luigi's Rescue Operation, it's all about knowing the puzzles for each room. You'll get a couple of actual portraits that you need to make a puzzle out of, and every single time there's one piece of the portrait that just doesn't match the others. Immediately cancel that one out of your mind. Always pay attention to where the front of the head is and the bottom of the tail of the creature is. That will definitely make it easier for you when you're putting these puzzles together. When it comes to finding the odd one in a room, there's always one that's just not the same character as everybody else. There'll be one of this enemy, so just look for the one that only has one. In the tiles room, a lot of the time you can just step on all the tiles in a row without ever having to step off the checkerboard, but you can step off the checkerboard. If you need to get an item that's clear on the other side of the board, you can actually run on the outside of the board and touch another tile that's not connected to the tiles you've already touched. And clear a path is pretty simple. Just push the horizontal barrels over and roll them a little bit in order to escape. I really haven't seen a single problem with any of these rooms. Now, unlocking the door is definitely the one that requires the best memory. Pay attention to the order that the buttons on the floor light up, and press those corresponding buttons on the tiles of the machine. Personally, I found it easier just to remember the first 3 and then back out, watch the last 2, and then put the last 2 in real quick. For Peach's day off, the first minigame is taking presents to Princess Peach, and you have to dodge all the Bitty Buds. You'll want to stay clear away from any other player, because you will bounce very heavily off of them. You can even use this as a defensive strategy by just pushing them away or pushing them towards Bitty Buds. But yeah, try to find an own little area where you can try to get away from the Bitty Buds and other characters yourself. Honestly, standing as far to the top of the screen as you can is probably your best bet. When you get to the donut portion, you don't want to be greedy, because if you pick a donut tray that everybody else picks, you don't get any points. So always go for the lesser 2 options. That's going to be your best bet until the final round, because there are tons of donuts on that tray that can definitely change the course of the minigame. So for that last round, you might as well always go for it unless you desperately need points, because it's worth a whopping 12 points for one part of one of the 3 minigames. It's a lot of points, so you want to make sure you'll cancel everybody out, at least to make sure that no one else one-ups you with those. But the final minigame is Fireworks, where you need to pick up these jewels. This one is extremely basic, and I don't really know if I have a lot of advice to give on this one besides just run towards the jewels as fast as you can. I guess I would say try to go for the further ones first, so that way you can actually grab the ones that are closer to you right after you put in the further ones. But you'll really want to focus on the first 2 minigames because it's really hard to mess this one up all that much. For Daisy's Field Day, the first one will have you jumping on platforms, and it's probably best not to move completely around the outsides where you often get trapped and can't really go anywhere because you can't go to a spot where there's already a player. So try to stay around the middle and make your way to the special coins that appear on the outsides and then back to the middle again. Round 2 will have free movement, and I've noticed most of the coins are going to be on one of the corners, so if you start seeing lots of coins dump onto one of the corner areas, start making your way to those first. And pay attention to where Daisy throws the red coins, because the next one is going to land in a completely different area. For round 3, where coins can appear anywhere, I found it best to make your way to the front of the line as fast as possible, because a lot of the time, your opponents are too busy trying to collect coins at the far end and getting very close to falling off. You'll always want to make sure you're at the very front, just collecting as many as you can. And the same thing could be said about round 4, but personally I found jumping to be the most viable here. Constantly jump. If you find yourself at the very edge, if you just jump, you'll make your way back to the center very quick. So you can take more risky chances going for coins that are about to fall off the wheel. For Wario's Buzzer Beater, there's lots of different mini games that you'll play. One, trying to find the exit path in the maze. This one just comes down to quick eyes. Quickly glance the screen and make sure that there's no exits being blocked, and always scan the top 2 first. For Which Has More, you're going to want to find the objects that have 3 of the same or 4 of the same. So this one's once again just being as fast as possible. For the missing piece, pay attention to the positioning of Wario. If his body is angled, you'll just immediately want to choose the piece where his feet are angled in that direction as well. For Which Is Longest, it's always going to come down between 2 that are obvious, and a lot of the time it's just an eyeball thing for which one looks the longest. For which one is different, it might be really hard to tell since they're all spinning very fast, but look for appendages, especially the hands and legs. Does Wario have his hands out on one or his legs angled in a different direction, like 1 foot up in the air? If you look closely, you can always tell. For Where Will He Stop, pay close attention to the dice, and you're just picking the space that the number shows. So if it shows a 4, just click on the one where it shows the 4th spot. And from left to right, the buttons will be positioned left, top, down, right. For how many coins, it's definitely a look-feel type of thing. If you see a pattern similar to this, it's always going to be 10. If they feel like they're all evenly spaced out, that should be pretty obvious. And if you see some that are slightly less or slightly more, it's probably going to be 8 or 12. Also, if you have time, just do a quick count as fast as you can by counting by 2s or 3s. And then you have Can You Dodge the Bullet Bills? Personally, I've only played this one twice, and every single time you get a setup similar to this, he always moves towards the screen, which would be towards the bottom. Waluigi's Pinball Arcade is literally just a big long game of pinball, where the one with the highest score wins. You'll want to try your best to get the bonuses. is, because these are what's really going to rack up a lot of points for you. In order to get a bonus, you have to light up all the letters for Waluigi towards the bottom of the board. Once you do so, you'll then get a random slot which will give you some type of power up. The best one is definitely the multiple pinballs, as it can really help you rack up an amazing score. Also, don't forget you have 2 flippers towards the top, and a lot of the time you can keep using these to roll them into the tunnels right beside them. Yoshi's Mountain Race is a pretty straightforward minigame. The entire time, you just want to cut corners as tight as possible when there's turns or areas where you need to move on to the next one. Do not go completely out of your way for the Yoshi apples, but they definitely do help out a lot. And use your flutter on pretty much any instance that you need in order to cross gaps. Also, try not to bounce on anything if you don't need to, because Yoshi's basic run is definitely more than enough. Rosalina's Radical Race is very straightforward, and the only way that you could lose is if you forget to do tricks on the ramp. Yes, this is just like Mario Kart, so every time you go over a ramp, you'll want to shake your controller, and make sure you shake it pretty aggressive, because there's a lot of times where it just doesn't pick it up, so as soon as you hit that ramp, definitely give it a good shake. Eventually, she will throw down a couple of speed boosts, which will cause you to swerve from left to right, left to right, left to right, so look out for those towards the end as well. DK's Conga Line is all about rhythm timing. Just pay attention to the notes and listen to the music. If you do so, you'll be able to hit L and R at perfect times every single time. There's not much else to help here, just pay real close attention to where the notes are coming, and just make sure that you have your timing down, and make sure you take full advantage of the single player portions, where that's where you're going to rack up tons of points. For Junior's Jauntlet, there's a lot of crazy things that could happen. Most of this is just him throwing some type of obstacle or items at you, and you having to dodge them. Now, you can play pretty mean with this one by pushing your opponents into these objects, so you'll definitely want to use that when the time comes. Also, there's lots of minigames that aren't just about dodging things. There's some where you have to pick up chickens, or even some where you have to chase a shy guy with a hammer in order to pop all his balloons. For the Hammer Bros attack, make sure you stand as far away from them on the outsides as possible, because when their hammers hit the ground, they will follow a distinct path forward. And for the Bob-ombs, don't be afraid to punch them out of the way. You can actually push them away from you and towards other enemies. For everything else, it's either collecting fruit or just dodging tons of waves of enemies flying towards you, so just keep an eye out and just find great positions in order to keep your character away from other players and away from the oncoming danger. The final round will have Bowser Jr. coming after you, and he'll always target a specific character for the first 3 hits. Make sure you stand as far away from him as possible, don't get near him towards the top of the screen, and at the very last second, move out the way so he doesn't punch you. As far as his punching frenzy, there's not much you can do about this one. The best option is to run quick circles around him so it takes him a while to turn, as his turn radius is very slow, but if you try to run away in a straight direction, he's going to catch you and he's going to pin you in a corner. Now it's time for some boss battles. For Dragon Eel Slayers, you'll want to stay to the top of the screen as much as you can and collect the shells left and right. A lot of the time, you'll be able to collect them before anybody else can. Simply dodge the whirlpool and just slam the A button as soon as it jumps out of the water for you to blast it with every shell in your inventory. For Mega Sting Bee Stompers, this one's pretty straightforward. You want to ground pound on top of the giant Sting Bee, but you can only ground pound once before you have to land on a platform in order to do it again. You can't just consecutively ground pound over and over again without landing on a platform first, so definitely remember that. Then for phase 2, he'll get rid of the 2 platforms in the middle, which means you have to actually jump on top of him or ride him across to the other side. I found riding him across to be the best option, and a lot of the time once he gets to one side, he'll go back and forth on that side at least one time. Also, use the little Sting Bees to get across if you need. Next up, you have Mega Rocky Wrench Wreckers. Yeah, that's a long name. This one's just a simple point and shoot. You want to always be shooting at the giant Rocky Wrench and not the little ones. The little ones will also fire wrenches at you, so make sure that you shoot your corresponding one to get it out of the way. There's also an occasional giant wrench that he'll throw that you'll all need to get out the way, or it will damage everybody. For Boss Sumo Bro Blitzers, once again these crazy boss names, all you have to do is create a path from the electric beam at the top all the way to your actual electric beam shooter. This one is very simple. For round 1, you just want to start from the top and work your way to the machine as quick as possible. For round 2 and 3, I found it easier to start at the actual machine and work your way up. A lot of the time it'll also give you a vertical pipe piece, and this is one that you'll need to play off of, because if that vertical pipe piece is at the top or the bottom, you'll probably want to start with that, because you'll need to take every other pipe and lead it to that vertical piece, because that one is the most important. For Bowser Crashers, there's a good chance that the first couple times you may not realize how to get your full 5 points for every single hit. You have to charge your board all the way up until you feel 4 little vibrations in the Joy-Con. It'll be a very long charge, so keep doing it until you reach that 5 points. But once you charge up, you're not able to move very fast, which makes it very hard to dodge attacks, especially in the first phase when it's in 2D. So sometimes it's best to just not charge and dodge first. Pay attention to falling enemies and debris, and also Bowser can breathe fire in the 3D section for phase 2, so make sure you're in a corner that's nowhere near the direction he's breathing fire in. And sometimes you don't need to really supercharge. If you see an attack coming and need to get an attack out quick, go ahead and charge up a +2 or a +3 attack. Sometimes it's just enough. This is also especially useful if you want to get a last hit in before everybody else. If he only has a sliver of health, sometimes a +3 attack will be more than enough. Now we have all of our extra mini games, and for JuiceWorks, it's really just about being good as a team. There's not really a strategy I can say that make this easier for yourself. The best thing I can say is if you're the one grabbing the apples, make sure you're watching out for the Monty moles. Pay real close attention to the ground and the smoke that comes up, because yeah, I was not expecting them to come up and impede my progress, as they are the only real obstacle in this minigame. There's not a whole lot to help out with ball volley, because it's very simple. Follow the circle on the ground and hit A right before the volleyball reaches you. It's pretty simple. The only thing you need to watch out for is the gold volleyball, and the big one. The big volleyball will be a little bit faster than the others, and the gold volleyball will shoot higher up in the sky, going off the top of the screen for about half a second. For a ballistic bingo, you essentially just need to get 4 in a row, so for one, definitely go after the gold stars first, they're the most important. But also remember to lead your shot, which means shoot a little bit in front of your target, as it is a moving target on the ship, and you might end up hitting one of the metal bars because you fired way too late. Bath bombs is relatively simple in the beginning as long as you guys are all spread out. You should have 2 people on each path, 2 on the left, 2 on the right, and 2 on the middle, with maybe a couple back guarding the gate. Remember, at the end, they're going to all rush the gate very fast, so if you want, you can even maybe line up all your characters towards the end of the gate at the very end of the game, or simply keep them in their positions, keeping 2 on each section and once again a couple by the gate. Chomp wash is very straightforward. Just simply stay in your own area when it comes to patching up the pipe. Everybody has a role, so make sure you just stay in your spot. And if you're the one watering the chomp, make sure you try to aim up, because you can actually start washing the chomp a little earlier before all the water is actually patched up. So aim upwards to start washing off the chain chomp before everything is completely patched. Match that item is a simple slots game. It comes down to how good are you at matching the actual items and remembering them on their roll-arounds. Remember, you have time, but not to take too much time, because after you fail, it will get slower each and every single time. So don't be afraid to go after it and be very aggressive at the very beginning. However, keep in mind, you do get a couple of bonus points if everybody gets a perfect. But the best way I always remember games like this is just pay attention to each time that object goes around and say it to yourself in your head, like star, 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 and then hit the button when you say star again. Trading cards is very simple, but when you're playing with a lot of people online and you can't communicate properly, this can be a train wreck. It's very simple though. If you have a number or piece that needs to be sent all the way down the line, just send it to the left if it's lower, or send it to the right if it's higher. Most of them are counting mini games anyways, until you get to the long picture of the dragon eel. Once again, just pay attention to the objects that are shown. For instance, you want to make sure that the head of the dragon eel is at the top and the tail is at the bottom. Focus on piecing together the other enemies and objects that are on the cards as well, like the sharks and the cheep cheeps and even the bloopers. Ski-daddle is a minigame I genuinely don't understand how you could lose. It's just simply pressing the buttons to the beat. You really should not mess this up unless you're purposely trying to for some reason, but yeah, this should be a very simplistic minigame to win. For Look This Way, the only thing that makes this really challenging is sometimes it'll stop but then continue scrolling to another arrow. Do not look the way until you hear a specific sound effect. Listen for this. So yes, wait for the dramatic sound effect and wait until you see the lights light up, which are the orange bars on each side of the screen, which shows you how long you have until you need to look, which normally is enough time to react. For Puzzle Pandemonium, just simply spread out. Have a lot of players on each sides of the room, and always look for the corner pieces, just like a real puzzle. They definitely help to build the puzzle a lot faster. So if you have the option to do so and it's right in front of you, go for the corner pieces first. Now we have our single player Koopathlon mini games, and starting with Noggin Knock. This one, it's all about speed, and I'm gonna say right now, for all of these mini games in this Koopathlon section, it is best to use a pro controller. You wanna have the bigger joystick, and also wanna make sure you have access to a D-pad, because a lot of these mini games are about moving into specific areas as quickly as possible. So yes, I found it easier to use the D-pad in this mini game. At one time, I was number 5 in the world from just trying this a couple of times, but also pay attention to patterns, where things appear starting from the middle, making their way to the outside, or the outside making their way to the inside, or going from left to right or right to left. Just really keep track of patterns, and don't go for obvious ones either. If you see 4 in a row and the 5th one is probably going to be a bomb, so keep your eyes peeled and be ready to see bombs when they pop up. Also remember to hit the 2 slots at the top left and top right. You have to be on the far left and the far right sections, or you'll just hit the middle one still. And constantly grab and use your item upgrades as soon as you get them. For Brick Breaker, it is absolutely necessary that you get the red paratrooper on the left side, because it can go through all the blocks and it goes very, very fast. This is something that can also be carried into the next rounds, so you'll want to make sure you always keep this one alive. Always track that one and make sure you go out of your way to save the red shell before going after the green ones. And also remember your directions. The further left or right side of the platform the shell hits, the further left or right it'll actually shoot up to the top of the screen. And in the final room, you'll get unlimited red coins every single time you hit the question block, so make sure you go for those as much as possible and send lots of shells up there to collect your coins after you release them. For gold and brown, you definitely want to use the D-pad here. It's very frustrating to use the stick and it not go exactly where you wanted to, which happened to me a lot of times. Always keep your eyes on the baked goods that are about to pop by turning to a brownish red color, and always keep your eyes on the smaller ones first, like the loaves of bread, which burn a lot quicker. And of course, get your items and use your power-ups as often as possible. For Spike's Gambit, you'll be making your way all the way to the top of the sandhill and all the way back down to the bottom, collecting coins along the way. Just watch out for the giant spike log by taking refuge at the left or right sides of the screen, but the best way to rack up points here is good usage of your item box. Always start making your way to the top when you see your item box bar is about to be filled, because it'll always spawn at the top section depending on the section that you're in, whether you're at the bottom one or the top one. One of the biggest ways to mess up is to spawn an item box right when they're all throwing a giant log, and then you have to make your way all the way back up in order to get it, which is wasting time and also wasting time for another item box usage before the end of the minigame. So strategize and make sure you get that item box at the right time. Down the hatch might seem pretty simple. You're just pushing prizes down into the hole. Well, you actually have to have a bit of strategy when it comes to pushing these prizes down. For the most part, if you have a long brick bar, you'll want to push it right down the middle. But if you see a section that's separated with 2 little ones, push one side and then push the other side. You'll want to push these in at the least amount of turns as possible, so that way you can keep racking up points. Also, if you can't tell where the pointer hand is, a lot of the times you might not even recognize that there's a small arrow on the screen on the front that also shows you where you're aiming. Use this a lot, especially when you can't see the hand, to know exactly where you're pushing, because sometimes even off by a centimeter from the center can cause you to mess up on your pushes. Lane change is very F-Zero-like, and another minigame that I feel is best if you use the D-pad to quickly position yourself on each track. When you get your item power up, most of the time you'll get the red coin bag. Make sure you only use this on straightaways, because it will put up a line of red coins right in front of you, so make sure there's nothing else in the way, so that way you can focus just on that line of red coins. Also, if you come across piles of coins, I think that's the best time to use the actual stick instead of the D-pad in order to switch lanes back and forth very quickly. If you're going for a world record in this game, you'll want to always have maximum speed and essentially pick up every single coin you come across, and utilizing your bonus items to max potential, making sure you pick up every red coin you drop and pick up every coin with your ×2 bonus on. Coin Conveyor is a game that's not necessarily for me, so I'm sure there's lots of pro strategies out there, but the best strat that I can give you is don't focus on completing 1 row or 2 rows at a time. Try to stack up 3 or 4 before finishing all those rows, because the more stacks that you have and the more blocks that you get together, you get a lot more points that way. So the best way to do this is try to fill up one side the most you can, leaving a single column on the other side, and then finish it off with a giant column of 4 in order to get your maximum amount of points. And also use bob-ombs sparingly in order to blow up surrounding areas, and especially if you find yourself trapped. Which door has more really just comes down to how good are your eyes. hallways. Can you quickly pick up how many of something is in a room? Really give it a quick look, because sometimes it's literally just one extra enemy in a room, especially if they're all the same color, can be very difficult to figure out. So yes, if you really want to make sure you're on top of the pack, you have to just continuously run forward without stopping to count. So a lot of the time it is going to be a quick eyeball thing. Also, try your best to collect as many coins as you can on the way to the door. Don't go completely out of your way to collect coins on the whole other side of the room, and make sure you use your bonus items when you get into the hallways after selecting the door. This is the best time to use it, so that way you can collect the coins right before going to the next door. Then we have sky high cannons. Remember, you have free movement once you blast out of the cannon. Once you gather all the coins at the top of the screen, it will then open a bonus cannon for you to fly up into the air and get even more coins. The best way to handle this is to fly up on one side and fall down on the other. And before a new round starts, always try to make your way to the bottom first, because sometimes it's really hard to make your way back down there when you're trying to go from cannon to cannon. So just try to fall all the way down without running into a cannon right before the next round begins. And make sure you use your coin bag right before you blast out of one of the cannons that are in playable action, not the bottom one that saves you when you fall. Now it's time for some Bowser minigames. With burning bridges, it's very straightforward. Just focus on your character and jump over the flames when they come. Keep an eye on the left and right sides of the screen, and you will never get hit. For Castle Hassle, continue moving forward. Don't get too far to the top of the screen, as a lot of the time you might get blindsided by a pit of lava. Stay around the middle towards the middle top area, and you should be good. Sleight of Shell is just how well you can follow chest. It's really not too difficult, just pay attention to where the chest is moving. Especially if there's only one good chest left, just keep an eye on that one good chest. And also if there's only one bad chest, just keep an eye on the bad one and just pick a chest that's not that one. For Fire Away, you're just moving up and down a pole to dodge enemy attacks. Don't be afraid to go down. You have plenty of room without touching the lava, so if you think you're not going to make it, definitely go down first and then try to progress your way back up. The floor is falling gets more difficult because of how many people are on screen, so your best bet is just to spread out as much as you possibly can. Try to find a little area where there's not tons of people near you, and then hopefully your allies also pick up on this and spread out as well. And finally, we just have some rhythm mini games. There's not a lot to teach here, and I'll probably just go over a couple things for each one, but for the first one, we have Soup Troop, which is very straightforward. This one shouldn't give you problems at all. Just wait for the fruit to go right in front of you, or the vegetable, and cut it right in time. Just listen to the music and cut it when it pops up right in front of you. Parfait the Course is a very simple mini game as well. You're just hitting the fruit back when the penguins throw them at you. Listen to the music, but keep an eye on the changes. For instance, the penguins on the second pineapple section will slide the pineapples at you faster, so be ready for that. And don't mess up with the orange slice at the end, as it's the only one that bounces and almost bounces twice. And just like cutting up the vegetables one, whisk cream is super simple. All you have to do is shake your controller. You don't even have to really whisk it, you can just kind of wiggle it each time, but just do it every single time you see the drop come down. And it's actually very well received with the controller. I've never really had any problems with this one, so neither should you. Bread and butter is also pretty simple. Just listen to the music and remember to pat the butter down on all the bread that follows. Sometimes it'll be 2 pieces or multiple different pieces. Just remember to always pat again over and over and over again until you're completely out of bread. For Short Stack Chef, you're just waiting for the circle to close all the way down towards the middle of the pancake. It will also go along with the music as well. For the smaller ones, it's going to close a lot quicker, so be ready for those, and at the very end, you'll be flipping your pancake to your partner to the right, which is a lot bigger and a lot slower timing than the other pancakes. For burger builders, you're just waiting for your time to throw the topping until it actually turns in your direction. Once again, just listen to the music and wait for the burger to appear in front of you before you throw anything down. Footlong Frenzy is without a doubt the most difficult of the rhythm mini games. These actually can be very frustrating. After a very slow roll-in of all the toppings, eventually they'll start mixing it up and having them slide in every which way. You always just want to pay attention to the last topping that's rolling in. As soon as that rolls in, that's when you're going to shut the sandwich. Also, of course, listen to the music, but sometimes the music isn't even enough. Definitely just focus up, and especially towards the end, really just pay attention to when the objects are coming onto the screen and how fast that they're moving. The cheese blocks move slower, the shrimp roll faster. Copycat Curry is super simple, where you're just copying Waluigi. Do exactly what he's doing. And you don't even need to do poses or anything like that like they've shown in the official trailer. Just shake the remote up in the air when it's your time, or just like pump your fist up in the air. Just do some type of motion so that way the Joy-Con can pick it up, and just remember the pattern. If you have to hum it in your head, just hum it. Unbarb is kind of the same way. Just listen to the patterns of the way the items are being tossed and get ready to poke out your Joy-Con forward to the beat and to the same pattern. And last but not least, we have On the Beat. Get ready to just dig on the beat. Pay attention to the circles, and when they close, that's when you're going to swing your Joy-Con. There's some slight bigger ones where you'll have to do it twice, little ones where you just do it once, bigger ones where you have to do it 3 times, and at the very end there'll be a giant one where you'll just need to dig like crazy. Like I said, pay attention to the circles as they can definitely help you with the rhythm, but this one shouldn't be too bad for you. And that's how to win every single minigame in Super Mario Party Jamboree. This was a very long video to make, so please make sure you show some love by leaving a like and subscribing, and letting me know if there's any other advice that you would like to give others for each of those minigames or any of the world records in this game. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and like always, I'll see you all on the next one. See ya, guys.